Hi, I'm Chef Lynn. Welcome to the Flavor Secrets Kitchen. Today we're making wacky recipes using tortillas. There are 4 of them and they all came out of this kitchen. So I know before we're done you're going to say, she's crazy, and you're probably right. But just follow along because everything has a reason. So I'll tell you the reasons as we go along, and then at the end I'll show you the finished product. So we're going to start by making an apple pie. This is a great one for Michigan because we're known for our apple pies. I've already got 2 1/4 cups of sugar in this bowl and some lemon juice, the juice of half a lemon. I've got 6 cups of Granny Smith apples here. You want to use kind of a tart apple. I'm going to add, usually I put in a teaspoon of fresh grated nutmeg and then also 3 teaspoons of cinnamon, because I figure if 1 teaspoon of cinnamon is good, then 3 is better. But this time I'm going to try this apple pie spice from Penzeys. I'll just put a couple of tablespoons in there. It's got a lot of cinnamon in it and basically the same thing. Then I'm going to add a cup of nuts, and I'm also going to add, let me set this back here, 2 cups of tortillas. Now why would I do that? The reason is because the sugar in the pie is a humectant. As soon as you put those apples with the sugar, they're going to start drawing out the juice. And the question is, where do you want that juice? Do you want it in your pie or do you want it all over your oven? So what the tortilla does, you saw how I had it all cut up into little strips, just cut them straight one way and then little strips the other way. What they do is they act like apple, but they absorb all of, in the same sense actually, that they absorb all the sugar. So what that's going to do is make your pie have what's called umami, or very deep depth in it. So it's going to keep the juice in the pie and keep it from going all over your oven. So once these are all mixed up here, all I have to do is fill up my pie. This may be a lot of apples for this dish. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. So I'm just going to put them all in there and then treat it just like a regular pie. Yeah, they're not all going to fit. I got a small pie pan here, but that's all right. Okay, and then I'm going to treat it like a regular pie, and I'm going to dot it with some butter, just like you normally would, here, there, and everywhere. And I've got a great crust here that I'm working with too. It's 2 cups of flour, a 1/2 cup of water, 3/4 cup of whole butter, and a teaspoon of salt. And you put it together just like any pie crust, and you can see it's just about indestructible. You could probably throw it across the room and still retrieve it and it would be fine. Just put that on top, crimp it around the edges, fold it in like this. And if you have really long fingernails, it's kind of difficult to crimp. This is how you crimp all along the side. If you do, you can also use a fork and just take the fork down the side, and that'll work just as well. But fold the top over the bottom, crimp it the best you can all around here. And as you can see, I really like my pies just chock full of apples, so I'm going to press it down like this, just like that. Crimp it all around, and then I'm going to egg wash it. This egg wash is 1 full egg and 2 yolks. And I don't want to have any standing egg, or it'll look like scrambled eggs on the top of my pie. So I want to make sure and cover it with the egg wash, because remember, wherever you put the egg wash, you're going to have a nice brown color, and wherever you don't put it, you won't. So make sure you totally cover the pie, but very lightly, and then I want to just slit it. And I like to slit it in the way I'm going to cut the pie later, because then there's no slit in the middle of the piece. So I'm going to have 6 pieces here. So I'll slit it like that with a very sharp knife, and then 2 over here. And this is going in the oven, in a preheated oven at 375 degrees for about an hour. So we'll see that again later. On to dish number 2. Our second dish is lasagna. With tortillas, you say? Now I know you're expecting me to wrap the lasagna in the tortillas, and that's not what I'm going to do at all. The reason to put the tortillas in is the same reason to put them in the pie, and it's to keep it firm and strong and to give it that umami, hearty taste when you eat it. You may not even realize the tortillas are there, but they blend great with the tomato sauce and they absorb it so that you're going to get a nice clean cut. Now notice that I cut these a little bit smaller, and each time I put a layer of sauce in, I'm going to put a layer of tortillas in. So I've got maybe 1.5 cups, maybe 2 cups to put in this lasagna. Now here's a good tip for lasagna. If you use the oven ready or no boil noodles, you don't have to cook the noodles first. So the Barilla makes a brand that's just straight, but I really like this one from Meijer's. It's called Oven Ready Lasagna, and the reason I like it is because it's a little bit curvy, and that absorbs more sauce. So when you use this kind of tortillas, these kind of tortillas, you have to make sure that you cover the noodles well so that you don't get any crispy noodle in there. Now everybody has their lasagna recipe. This one is some Seasons Harvest arrabbiata sauce. It helps to use a really thick sauce. I added some diced tomatoes, I added some onion, and I added some salt and pepper, and that's all I did to it. So then you just layer it. Some people like to put ricotta cheese in there. I like to put a mix of mozzarella and also some Mexican mix that's got a little bit of Colby or cheddar in it. And again, my tortillas. And then I'll make 3 layers like this, because that's the other reason I like these noodles, is they actually fit exactly perfectly in this pan. So that takes a lot of the stress out of it for me. And then I put the sauce on again. Every layer has sauce and cheese and tortilla. And even this top layer, I'm going to put tortilla on the top to help absorb the moisture from the sauce. Make sure again that these noodles are really covered. And I also, with this sauce, I used my immersion blender, and I made it so that it was a little bit less chunky. I didn't really puree it because I like to have some texture to the sauce, but I did use the immersion blender a little bit. Okay, one more time. Tortillas, and then sauce on the top. And this is going in a preheated oven. Now remember, everything's already cooked because I cooked the meat and onions before I put it in the sauce. So with lasagna, you can make it way ahead. All you have to do is warm it up, basically. So sometimes I like to even make it the day before and then put it in the refrigerator, cut it, and then heat it up. Then you'll get a really nice slice. That's all there is to it. And we're on to our third dish. So now we're on to our third recipe, and this is something I know you'll really, really like. It's cookies. And these are going to remind you of the old potato chip cookies from like 1950 or 1960, way back then. I've already got in here a pound of butter, 2 sticks of butter. Sounds better than a pound, doesn't it? I always imagine a pound as a pound in my hip. Anyway, 2 sticks of butter, 3/4 of a cup of white sugar, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, and that's all so far. Then I've got a teaspoon, I'm going to put in a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of vanilla. I always do my vanilla teaspoons like that. Okay, now we're going to put in, I actually put in 2 eggs there. I don't think I mentioned that. So 2 eggs were also already in there, and I'll mix that up just really quickly, and then add the rest of the ingredients. A cup of pecans, and these are ground pretty finely. 2 cups of tortilla croutons. Now in this case, I did the tortillas a little bit different. As you can see, I cut them into little squares. So I cut little strips across the tortillas, and then I cut them across again, and I made little squares. Then I put them in a freezer bag with 2 tablespoons of melted butter and shook them like the old shake and bake, okay? Then I put them on a cookie sheet and put them in the oven at 350 for about 15 minutes. And these are delicious. You're going to want to make these for a garnish, for soup, or just for snacking, whatever. It tastes like a really, really buttery saltine. I love them. So I'm going to put the whole 2 cups into the cookies, and then I'm going to add 2 1/4 cups of flour. Now, 2 1/4 cups will make kind of a flat cookie. If you want a cookie that rises up a little bit more, then you want to do 2 3/4. Then all we have to do is mix it up. Start it out on slow so flour doesn't go flying all over. That's the nice thing about having a really big mixer bowl like this. I used to have to cover this with plastic so that it would contain the flour and keep it from going all over the kitchen. But with a really tall mixer bowl like this, you don't have to worry about it. Okay, now I can see that it mixed really well all the way to the bottom. Normally where's my catch over here? There it is up there. Okay, we'll take this out, and our dough is all mixed up. Now what we want to do is make bite-sized cookies. We want to make well, they're not going to be bite-sized when we're finished, but we want to take a cookie and make it round like this. Then dip it in the sugar, like this. Roll the sugar all over, and then once you have the sugar on it, you can roll it into more of a circle. And then we'll put it on a greased cookie sheet. Now I use a little bit of butter. I don't like the sprays, so I just use a little bit of butter to grease it. Like this. Just a tiny little bit all over. And then I'll place my cookies on the buttered sheet, and just keep making them like that. But make sure that you space these apart because they're going to spread quite a bit. So we need them to be more like 3 across, then 2 in the middle, then 3 across. And just keep making these cookies until you have enough, until your sheet is full. Then we're going to bake these at 375 for about 15 minutes. Now be careful and don't overbake them, because this is one of those cookies that can get really, really crispy and almost too crispy if you overbake it. So they might look just a little bit underdone when you take them out of the oven, but don't worry about it, because let them cool on the cookie sheet and they'll finish cooking on the cookie sheet. On to dish number 4. So we've reached our 4th recipe already, and as you can probably guess, it's a dessert. I call this frozen banana dessert, and it's pretty healthy. I'm using a flour tortilla here. In fact, in all of the recipes today, I've used flour tortillas. And if you couldn't keep up, all the recipes are online. They're all free. All you have to do is go to www.mexamericafoods.com and look in the recipe section, and they're all listed there. So I'm using a banana, some whipped cream cheese, and you can use the fat-free type here if you want. I'm not, but you can if you want to. A small flour tortilla, pecans, ground, and a fresh banana, and some chocolate. Now I like to use melted milk chocolate for this, but you can use any kind of chocolate you want. So the first thing I want to do is find the size of my dessert. So I'm cutting off the ends, which I'll discard, and then I want to have kind of a half a banana for each one. Then I need to cut the tortilla to match the banana. So I'm going to cut off the ends here so it matches the banana. Then you can use this for croutons or something else. You don't have to throw it away. Then I'll spread the whipped cream cheese all the way to the edge so that that's going to be my seal on this little piece of tortilla. Then open up my banana. Smells so good. Potassium. And then just roll it up. And see how the cream cheese seals it on the edge. Now the next thing we want to do is dip this in chocolate. So this is kind of the hard part. I usually use a spreader and do it like this and kind of get it halfway. Get as much as I can using the spreader. The problem with dipping it in there is that it'll be too thick. So you want just a thin coating of chocolate, and then you get to lick your fingers when you're finished with this. Then just spread it down the other side. Once you've got chocolate all over it, you can just kind of put it in the nuts and cover it with nuts. And I usually, because bananas will turn brown, then I'll usually just touch the end of it too, and then lift it up and put the nuts on the bottom too. Okay? Now, you have to be just a little bit careful. Take your popsicle stick here and stick it in the end. Don't freeze your bananas first because they'll turn brown, and also because then you won't be able to get the stick in there. Don't laugh, I did that. And then we're just going to set them on top of a little pile of nuts there, make a whole bunch of them, and freeze them. And I'll come back now and regroup here and show you the results of all of those 4 recipes. So here we are with our 4 wacky tortilla dishes. We started out with the pie, and there you can see it's really, really juicy and full of umami depth. Then we made the lasagna, same thing. It cut out really cleanly, so the tortillas protected it, and they're adding extra tomato flavor because of what they've absorbed. Then we made the cookies, as I mentioned. If you want them to be puffier, just put in a little bit more flour, like start with a half a cup and then keep adding flour until they're the consistency that you want. The recipe that I gave and have online is to make them flat like this. And last but not least, the frozen banana dessert. Once the bananas are frozen, you can pick them right up and eat them like a popsicle, which I think I'm going to do in just a second. Hope you enjoyed this and that you'll try them at home. I'm Chef Lynn. Enjoy.